Welcome to another episode of The Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes, the storytelling show that features The Clearing, where all good questions come to get asked and all good stories come to be told. And where all my guests have two things in common. They're all creative individuals and all with an interesting story to tell. There are some lovely storytelling metaphors, a clearing, a tree, a juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, some alchemy, some gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. So it's all to play for. So yes, welcome to The Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin. Well, wasn't that just the most tickety-boo introduction? Welcome. I'm even getting a clap from the lovely Kate Dimbleby. And you're very welcome. You're an Acappella vocal virtuosity pants. When I Googled you, it says very clearly, Kate Dimbleby sings. And you've even got an album called Songbird. So you're a songbird that sings, and we love you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, and so I did Google you. We've got people in common. Keith Warmington, who I know you perform with a lot. Cal McChrystal, who adores you. He got in touch specially to go. She's very super talented. And indeed, you've sung for Gifford Circus during the Royal Variety performance in 2022. I know you know all this, but I'm just telling you, I know too, because I've done some research. When you were doing the musical accompaniment, you were singing in the background while the wonderful aerial artists called Carpe were weaving their magic.
Sorry, I lost you for a second.
I
know that's not good, is it?
No. Did you hear any of that? I was blowing some happy smoke at you.
I'm just wondering whether to tether to my phone to make it easier to hear you.
Yes. So am I coming through, Tokyo? Can you hear me? Or are you going to freeze on me? Oh, it could be that we've got a weak connection. This could be interesting. You've frozen. You look great, but you're frozen. So, hashtag awkward. This has happened before, the quirks of Zoom. I could have lost. She could have decided that she didn't want to do this after all, and she's disappeared.
Okay, we've got you. It's all going to be fine now. Now it's fine. Everything's fine.
So, yes. So I've just been happy, wittering on, blowing happy smoke. So, yes. Did you hear any of that?
I heard little bits. They all sounded great.
Yeah, listen, you're awesome. That's the important thing.
Hooray. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I Googled you, but if someone doesn't have any reference to you and says, oh, hello, can I introduce you to Kate Dimbleby? What's your favourite way of either avoiding or answering the question when some random human being says, hello, what do you do? What's your favourite way of avoiding or answering that question?
Oh, that's a good question. Avoiding is probably the thing late in life that I've tried to find ways to do, depending on the circumstance. So I usually say I'm a singer, creative producer, writer, and I've spent the past 4 years building a software storytelling platform with my husband. That's kind of the
And by the way, to that point as well, stornaway.io is the most extraordinary thing. And I love it because you've got your own story island going, and I've got a clearing as a storyscape within this podcast. But you're in a, check this out, you're in a big funding, it's doing very well, isn't it, stornaway.io?
Yes, yeah. Having started as a startup in our basement, essentially, and launching in the pandemic online, we've made this video storytelling tool that lets people make interactive stories. So it is very in line with what you do and with theatre and with actually my experience. It's just also a software company, which means that we now live in that kind of ethereal world of, tech venture capitalists and things. We're trying to avoid all of that as much as possible and grow it from the ground up. But it has been really successful. We're being used all over the world by anyone from sort of students to kind of big enterprise using it for learning and training. So we're very happy with that. And I think it does, I'm sure I'll talk about it later, but I think it does tie in with where I started, because I think at some level I've always been, although I am a performer, I think I've always been interested in the audience more than me.
Yes.
like I've always been interested in enabling other people to get involved, whether, you know, and actually I was very uncomfortable in the early days when I was signed to a record label and they were putting my face on the cover and it all had to be about me. I found that very excruciating and awful. And so I feel like the journey of my life has been making it less about me and more about them, which, you know, that's been, so it feels great to have creators all over the world using this piece of software to tell their stories. I mean, who wouldn't love that? So
that's a very warm
really
and
lovely.
A very warm and generous disposition, if I may, to achieve sort of performance wisdom, whereby you realise it's not all about me, it's about my audience. And that's a lovely thing. It's your gift to them, which I think is lovely.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I actually think that most performers are the same. You very rarely meet the really, really sort of ones with the huge egos. You know, I think most people feel it is quite excruciating having attention, and the whole nature of performing is to kind of push it back out.
Yes.
But I think because I came from a family of already kind of well-known, so the Dimbleby name was kind of well-known, I saw early on this weird effect that being notable had on people, you know, it kind of made them behave weirdly.
It's called attributed charisma. I don't know if you've heard that before, where if you meet somebody famous, we put them on a pedestal, which is called attributed charisma. You bung them up there, even though there's no real true relationship to make that happen. But it's quite an interesting dynamic.
Yes. And I think it actually, again, now later on, I'm like, I think it happens in all walks of life where you meet people. I certainly have it, where you meet people and you kind of have an idea of who they are. And you're like, you give them this status, and actually it's possibly not who they are at all.
Yes, exactly.
And then you spend quite a long time trying to figure out, oh, why does this feel weird? Oh, it's because I think they're somebody other than they are.
Yes. And by the way, approachability is the dream thing for me. I love the fact that, you know, even with this vehicle, I love the dynamic that if you get in touch with someone, all you need to do is say who I am, what's our connection, why am I talking to you, and then ask the question, and I don't mind a yes or a no, and delightfully you were just immediately open and receptive, as I thought and knew you would be. I've also seen you perform a few times. You were with Howard and Stu from Living Spit. Was it Sleeping Beauty you did? Sorry, I'm
no, and that those were the ballet dancers. I couldn't have fulfilled that role. But no, I was playing Penelope in Living Spit's version of the Odyssey.
Of course you were. Sorry.
Very grumpy and cross that my husband hadn't come home for 10 years, and but also sort of empowered to tell Penelope's story. It was a really amazing experience, actually, and one that I wouldn't have had if I didn't live in this glorious city of Bristol, where I moved 10 years ago. So and
if I may, I'd like to dedicate this episode to Howard, who's still with us, but he's really not very well. But you know, what a wonderful, gorgeous human being he is.
Absolutely.
So it is my great delight and pleasure, the lovely Kate Dimbleby, Songbird, as I've mentioned already. That is the name of your album. I'm not trying to be sexist and call you a songbird, but, but you are bird.
And it has an S on it, so it's not the Eva Cassidy one. Songbirds.
Songbirds. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you here to The Clearing, and this is about stories of distinction and genius, which you'll be giving me by the bucket load. There will be an overt opportunity later for you to talk about not just your music, but also your own story island from stornoway.io, because this will also go into the UK Health Radio space as well. No extra charge. You're welcome at 1.2 million people listening, a Paz. Who knows? Anyway, so let's get going on the curated structure. There's going to be a clearing a tree, a lovely juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There'll be a couple of random squirrels, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. And there could even be the occasional bell. Cashier number 4, please. So, all that wibble notwithstanding, what is a clearing for you? Where does Kate Dimbleby go to get clutter-free, inspirational, and able to think?
Well, that's very easy, the forest. So, I mean, it's absolutely in line, probably quite a boring answer, but it really is the forest in that all my albums have been written partly in forests when I've been walking in them. And there's a particular forest around the corner from here in Bristol that nobody else seems to have discovered, or at least they don't go there when we're there. And over the past 4 years, since we've been building this kind of slightly stressful online digital business, my husband and I have gone there and we walk the same circuit every time. And every time we start at the beginning, and usually by the middle, we're having some sort of argument about something. And then by the end, we've sort of resolved a problem. And it's a magic forest like that. And also it has that ability that lots of forests seem to have, where it feels totally new every time you go into it, because depending on what the trees are looking like or the ground is feeling like. And I've always found, since I moved, I lived in Canada for a while, and I used to go in the forest often. And obviously in that forest there were bears, and that was slightly more frightening. But actually, again, kind of getting over that fear of there might be a bear around the corner was part of, for me, the decompression process of just kind of letting go of all the worries that I was carrying. And then actually genuinely talking about songbirds, songs would sort of come into my head, and then I would start singing them, and then I'd run home and write them down and try and do the orchestration for them.
What a gorgeous metaphor and analogy about, going on a bear hunt in the forest, all the best types of storytelling. There's Hansel and Gretel in there. And I love the fact you have an argument because life's a forest and you can't see the wood for the trees. And then you come out again, and then there's a song that's occurred. There's a bird that's flitted into your head. Perfect.
Yes, exactly.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So can I congratulate you for that answer, just being in the forest? But it's a very specific one that you say is completely secret. But now can you reveal where that is, please?
No, otherwise I'd have to kill you.
If I know too much, you'll have to kill me. So yeah, keep it secret. That's fine. So we're in the forest then.
I feel like it's got magic. They talk a lot now, don't they, about spores and fungi. And I feel like this particular forest, there is actually a clearing which has yew trees all around it, very, very sort of ancient yew trees, which I think have a symbolism anyway. And it does feel a little bit magic. It feels like you should go there and, ask for what.
Although it's a secret, could I please ask you, live on air, please, if you could take me there sometime, because I'd love to see the clearing you're talking about, because obviously it plays into my metaphor.
Yes, we should do a live episode there.
Hey, let's do that. I've got a weird gizmo that can do that. So yes, let's do that. Brilliant. So I'm going to now arrive in your delicious, sumptuous clearing of the forest with a tree. I know you've already got some, but I'm going to arrive a bit waiting for Godot-esque with my own tree now to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. How'd you like them apples? So this is your response to the lovely construct of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We've had 5 minutes, Kate Dimbleby, to have thought about four things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention. That's where the random squirrels comes in. And then 1 quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know until you tell us. So you don't have to shake it all in a wanna, but over to you to interpret the shaking of your canopy, please.
Well, I think I love that. I think that I've already probably mentioned a couple of the things that have shaped me. So having a name that people immediately always used to say, are you related to David Dimbleby or one of the others? Sometimes David Attenborough. Having the name Dimbleby has shaped me in that in my early career, I found it very problematic, and I've probably spent 20 years trying to sort of prove myself beyond the name and feel that it's sort of, the opposite of Nepo Baby. I felt kind of like I'm a singer and no one's taking me seriously as a singer because of this name and blah, blah. And then what's really lovely is that recently I've met at least 3 people in my kind of close circle and people I work with who come from totally different backgrounds. One of them comes from a farming family in Herefordshire. One of them comes from a banking family in Scotland. And the other one is from a farming family in Wales. And all 3 of them, different ages, said, I hated my name. One of them has changed her name because she hated her name, because everybody knew, oh, you're from that family. You're from the farming family in the village of blah. And similarly, the banking family, oh, you can't be a creative person because you're from the banking family in West Lothian or whatever. And then I sat next to the Welsh person, I'm trying to be discreet here, at a dinner recently, and he said, talked about this whole thing of names, and he said, I come from nowhere, I come from nothing, my family were a farming family, never made any money, and then I became a tech kind of millionaire. And even then I used to come back to the village and everyone would be like, oh, look, it's so-and-so's son, and he said, and I hated having that name until my father died, and then I've never been so proud to be his son.
Oh, how lovely. It
was very, very, it was one of those kind of moving moments where I realized that I'd been battling this sort of invisible demon because actually it is just my name, there's not much you can do about it. And similarly, and I think I'd been thinking because it was a famous name, it was somehow different to other people's names, but I don't think it is. I think our names carry a lot about us, and our job as we grow up is to kind of figure out who we are beyond our name,
Yes.
I noticed that in your storytelling in the podcast, you were like, Chris Grimes, you did some really clever rhyme, and I was like, isn't that lovely? He's kind of turning his name into this fun part of his.
Oh, you're talking about your life and times with me, Chris Grimes.
Yes, exactly. By the way, it was almost like you were made for that.
Well, Grimes is grotty and Dickensian, which suits me fine. I am Christopher Allen Lyndon Grimes for reasons I've never really understood. And I did wrestle with, should I call myself as an actor Christopher Lyndon? And then I realised that sounded more like a tap dancing pond. So instead, I thought I'll stick with Grimes because it's grotty, it's Dickensian, it suits me. And if I may, Kate Dimbleby suits you.
Yeah, I know. Well, I did. And then I had a moment during my career. So I released sort of 4 albums and toured the world as Kate Dimbleby. And obviously no one cared because I was singing jazz, and that's got nothing to do with BBC broadcasting. But I had quite a funny moment in my sort of 20s after I got married, 30s. And I suddenly told an agent that I wanted to change my name to my married name. He was like, are you effing kidding me? You've got this reputation, you've built this, career for yourself. Are you saying you want to throw that away? And I was like, yeah, I do. And that's a bit of a pattern I've had in my life where as soon as I kind of reach something's tangible, I'll throw it away and do something else. And I think that is now, again, with the wisdom of nearly being 50 in September, I realise that's the best way to approach life, is never to get too attached to the name or identity that you're in, because it's always changing to something else. And
there's always that opportunity to release something as a ghost writer, metaphorically anyway, isn't there? So if you really want to apply that, you shouldn't shoot yourself in the foot and throw all the bathwater out and just try and do something else, which you're doing with Storing Away IO doesn't have a Dimbleby in there at all. No, there's a Dimbleby in there, if you know what I mean.
Well, and I think, and it's, it's a testament to where I've got to, that I bring it up as the first thing, because it used to be the first thing that I would try and sort of literally duck and dive. And then, it's like if you've got a very, very noticeable hairdo or something, like we bring the thing, don't we, that we know someone's going to bring to us. We kind of get in there first.
Yes. I mean, just this morning I said you had lovely wallpaper. So there we are. I noticed it, so I called it out. There you go.
Yes, with lots of birds on. So that would take me to my next apple.
Oh, good segue. I like you.
I know. Thank you. Thank you very much. I can't remember what I was going to say, but I was just trying to move on. But I was going to say trees, Canada. So that's the other thing that shaped me, is that I did, at that point when I was going to throw everything away, I moved to Canada with my husband, young couple, just married, kind of went there. He got we didn't know what we were doing, but we were just like, let's get away from everything we know.
Yeah.
And let's find out who we are together. And that was the best decision we ever made. Even though we came back, it was something about the new, it was really romantic. It was like the new world, who are we in this new world? That sort of pioneering spirit of actually, what can I do? Who am I? What do I want to do? And I then, that's when I wrote my first album of originals, because I'd previously always done other people's songs. In fact, I kind of liked that. I liked hiding in personas of other people, for probably the reasons we just talked about. And that was the first time I wrote my own songs and had to kind of really dig deep into what I wanted to talk about or sing
Yes.
about. And Canada was just, there's a lot of people in the UK who laugh about Canada and say, oh, it's very nice. And, there's my mum particularly is one of those people who's like, oh, I can't bear it, how nice they all are. but I found it really amazing to be in a place where people didn't bring their insecurity and laugh at themselves. And, in that British way, it was so gentle, the culture. You used to go to a party or something and people would say, how are you? What do you do? And you'd kind of do that British thing of like, oh God, they need to know everything about me. And then they go, no, I mean, what did you do today?
So you went full feral to find yourself, if I may, and you went to Canada,
yes.
into the forest and the woods and the gorgeous redwoods.
Yeah, cliche, real cliche.
No, it's not. It's really, it's like a vision quest. It's fantastic.
Well, and everybody at home, as they do, whenever you do anything a bit bold or weird or out of what's expected, people were like, oh, you'll come back. And when we came back, everyone was like, oh, you see, didn't work, did it? Because our house also got taken over by a woman who stopped paying the rent. And so it was all a bit of a disaster in lots of ways. But now I'm like, no, it was not a disaster. It was an amazing learning curve. And we came back and had to build our life from scratch again because we'd sort of thrown everything away. But that was a great opportunity to refine what we wanted to do. Which brings me to my next apple.
Yes, segue away. You're awesome. Thank you.
Which is the Alexander technique. Yeah. It's a bit showbiz. No, actors and voice people know about the Alexander technique because it's about, lots of people think it's about posture and breathing, and it sort of is. And it gets taught in drama schools and music schools. But I found it because I had really bad back pain. And that was, again, it's all slightly connected. So very early in my life, I was lucky. I kind of achieved success quite quickly after coming out of university. And I had a show that then toured on big stages, but I had no preparation or training for that success. So I had a voice, but I didn't really know, I hadn't really learned how to use it properly or how to keep it.
Or how to stand and hold yourself as you imparted your vocal.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so the pain got worse and worse and worse. And I think it was a kind of tension that I just never knew how to release. So I would get very, it's a lot of adrenaline on stage and then I would come off stage and just feel absolutely kind of crippled and drained. And I didn't really understand what was going on. And I went to an Alexander technique teacher. I mean, I went to a lot of different people, but it was the Alexander technique teacher that I think showed me this connection of mind and body and got me realizing that I was less at the mercy of the elements than I thought. Yes. And
if I may, it's really set you free because of your unique cappella. You love to do stuff unaccompanied, so it's really raw because it is just you with your voice, your presence, your physicality, and so it's obviously really found you that center point.
Absolutely. No, I think the a cappella work wouldn't have happened without that. I did then later train with Bobby McFerrin, the Don't Worry, Be Happy.
All of that.
I'm glad you did it, not me. But I think I wouldn't have found that without it. And it was something very powerful about if you strip everything else away, what are you left with? Your voice and your body and how you communicate. And then a kind of trust in what comes out of that. And so that's how these songs arrived. And then I would layer them. And I would always, the message to myself, because of the Alexander technique, was that if ever I got to a bit that felt like, oh, this sounds awful, or God, I really can't hit that note now and stuff, I would not let that put me off. I would kind of move into it with a kind of jazz singing sensibility of like, this is an interesting note.
Yes, sometimes the magic is in the imperfect, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I hadn't, because I'd maybe been, not really successful. I wasn't Adele or anything, but, because I'd had a bit of success early on, I sort of, like a lot of people, you think, oh my God, I've got to maintain this thing. I've got to maintain this thing because it's going to go. And actually it was like, no, I need to break it all back down again and re-find it.
You weren't Adele, you were a Dimbleby. See what I did there? It was just a bit of alliteration that gave me a gift there. So we could be on to...
thing we have in common.
Lovely. And a lovely voice, obviously. Just
thank you.
That at you. We could be on to your fourth shapeage now.
Yes, my fourth shapeage. I think I didn't even think about the fourth one.
Well, maybe we've had four. I don't know. I mean,
I think we've had three. Alexander. Fourth shapeage, Bristol.
Lovely.
Okay? Am I allowed to use a place?
Of course.
No. Well, yes, Bristol and its people. So again, moving on to a theme, left London 10 years ago, just at the point where I just kind of refound my voice, in inverted commas, with a show about the singer Dory Previn. And I made an album about her. She's a 70s songwriter. She taught me a lot, actually. But I was kind of at Leicester Square Hippodrome. I had literally my name up in lights. It was like one of those kind of having had two babies and thinking I would never do anything again. And lo and behold, I was like, okay, I think it's time to move now. So we moved, and partly because of my husband's work as well, we moved to Bristol. But then I found myself, I literally didn't know anyone here. I didn't have any creative contacts here. My whole life had been in London, my whole kind of work life. And so I found myself walking around the city a bit like I walked around the forests in Canada, like thinking, what happens now? And thanks to the city, and actually I would say its people, one of the first people to come up to me in the school playground was this wonderful woman, Fiona Matthews, who runs a theatre shop.
Yes,
which,
of course.
The bit came out of. And, she just came up and just said, are you wanting to do anything here? Do you want to? It's just so kind, because again, it's hard, isn't it, when you don't really know which world you fit into? And
yes, is this the Hotwell's primary playground?
It is, yes. It's a hotbed.
Because, by the way, my daughter Lily has just got a job back at Hotwell School, and that's where she decided she wanted to be a teacher, and she's just got a job back there. And yes, that playground is a really wonderful space.
Yeah, and they're not always, as we've seen on Motherland, school playgrounds are quite often pretty awful. And actually, a lot of my experience was quite awful for all the reasons I said at the beginning, which is I think there's a problem with playgrounds where we all assume we know who each other are. She's a lawyer, she's a doctor, she doesn't work, he doesn't do this. And actually, the truth is, we're all just muddling along, trying to figure out.
We're all just winging it because it's chaos.
So Fiona kind of like this scooping me up, giving me an opportunity. And then there was a brilliant arts centre over the other side of the city called Zion Arts, run by this, again, wonderful woman, Jess. And just that thing of openness and people being prepared to kind of find out who you are rather than assume they know.
Lovely.
I think Bristol was very good for that, and let me kind of, that's when the Songbirds album came from Bristol, and it came from a period of walking. I mean, I literally, this is in terms of Songbirds, I walked around the streets with my mobile phone. This was on a bad day, and to get connection, I would just kind of walk up to people and say, what if you had a song, what would it be? If you had a sound, what would it be? And I just got obsessed by what's in us beyond what people see. Yes. And so then I started recording all these people, sales girls outside Wilco's, who sang Adele songs actually, and then a young family from Croatia, I think, and they sang me a kind of lullaby. And it was just, it was one of those beautiful moments of like, if you just don't mope in your room, thinking, when am I ever going to work again? But get out there and start talking to people and try and ask for.
Yes, it's about the desire for connection. And you talked about the roots and the trees and all the connections of fungi and all that stuff. It all relates.
Yeah, and it's frightening, I think, because when we're in certain places, we don't feel we can do that. But that has become, I think, probably my driving mission is sort of to keep that openness that other people give me. You know, it's like that. It does pay forward, doesn't it? It's like if you're open, other people become
how to
open.
make ideas spawn by being connected.
Yeah.
Which comes back to your forest, which is your clearing, of course. How lovely.
Yay.
So that's 4 shapeages. Now we're going to talk about 3 things that inspire you, Kate.
Oh, I should have thought about. I did sort of think about this, but then I would come in spontaneously. I think. Well, the sound of people inspires me. So that sound, you know, I think I said to you when I heard your voice that you reminded me of Cal McChrystal, a director I've worked with loads. You've got a quality to your voice that's really similar. And so instantly I felt sort of at home and happy. And because I've worked with Cal on, he's actually directed like 4 of my theatre shows. And I think there's something, you know, if we can get beyond maybe just the literal words people are saying and it's not transactional, it's more about hearing this kind of sound and spirit of them. Again, I found that very inspiring. I've actually got this game with a friend of mine on WhatsApp where depending on the day, she's a massive reader and I listen to a lot of music. So she'll say, I'm feeling a bit today. Have you got a song that will help me? And I'll send it over to her. And similarly, one day I was like, exactly that. I can't see the wood from the trees. It's really like murky today. And she sent me over the Stravinsky piece of music because she's a classical music person. And it was amazing. I played the music and literally the sound of it lifted me from where I was and took me somewhere else. And I was like, that's magic.
Oh, it might be nice to share that Stravinsky music as well as part of the suite of what we put on here for you.
That's a good idea. Yes,
because it'll be out of copyright and it's all good.
No, and I think it's Stravinsky. Now I say that I always get these things wrong, but I'll definitely share it. Maybe it's Sibelius. It might be Sibelius.
Well, whatever it is, we'll put it in and go.
Yeah, it has this lovely bit at the end. So it goes from this place of murky, I don't know where I am. My brother says I've been like that all my life, of like, when I'm in my low point, I'll be like, where am I? Who am I? What am I doing here? And I always think it's new. I always I've never felt this before. But what's lovely about this music is it goes from that place, very familiar place, to this really calming horn section that just makes you go, it's all going to be okay. The world's a big place. You don't know what's going to happen.
Today you wake up and it feels like it's all turned to Wibble, but then tomorrow it's a new day. It's all good. We're all we're all trying to make it. That's all good.
And other things that inspire me. Well, funnily enough, now I'm working in an office for the first time. Like in my 50th year, I finally decided to get an office job. I did do it in my 20s, but then I tried to avoid it for as long as possible. But and so in our office, Stornoway, there are only about 8 of us, and it's working from home and it's in the office, a mixture of everything, which is fantastic, I think, for everybody. But when I go in there, I used to sort of think, oh God, I have to dress up and be, I literally was in my temping days. I need to put on a suit and talk about KPIs.
And get your clackers done, your nails done.
And now I don't. I'm much more, I kind of follow, and I like the younger people who are in our office. I get very inspired by them. I'm like, this is brilliant, because they have totally different life view. It's just brilliant. You go in there thinking one thing, you come out thinking another, and you get introduced to all sorts of music you would never know. I like office life. If it's not, we don't have a water cooler and our desks aren't too sort of horrible and chrome. It's all quite fuzzy. I'm quite enjoying that.
Great inspirational. Any other inspirations before we move on to some squirrels, please?
Dory Previn. So the 70s songwriter who I did the show about. She is someone who, unlike me, I used to, hide under other people's personas. Dory is one of those people. She had a breakdown in her 40s when Andre Previn left her for Mia Farrow. That's the story.
Wow.
Mia Farrow was like 20 years old and beautiful and blonde. I mean, it's your basic nightmare, sort of a dark-haired brunette. has husband leave for, but it's like the oldest cliche in the book. Anyway, there's obviously a lot more to the story than that. But she wrote an album of songs, which I then did some interpretations of, called Beware of Young Girls, which you would think would be a kind of revenge album. But what's amazing about Dory's songwriting is that she manages to take these emotions, these raw emotions like anger, jealousy, fear, and she really explores them, but also brings a dollop of humor. I mean, just like a huge amount of humor. So she never lets you kind of fall into a pool of kind of misery. She's always kind of finding the fun in it. And when I sent my version of her songs to her husband, who's still alive, Joby Baker, he's like a Hollywood actor. So her story ended well. His comment on my versions was like, well, Kate, yeah, it's good, but you're trying to sound too pretty. And Dory wasn't interested in sounding pretty. And it was the best tip I could have got, because actually it was true. I was trying to kind of make it all nice and clean around the edges. And actually the whole thing about Dory is that her voice was a little bit ragged. It was hard sometimes to hear, but that was its beauty. And
lovely. What a great observation. Ragged, but that's where the beauty lies. Absolutely. We don't want pure. We want a little bit of maverick in there.
Yeah, exactly. And so
did you go and remaster then based on that feedback?
No, the album is actually, that's interesting. The album is as it was when I delivered it to Joby, but then I started performing it live. And actually I ended up in New York performing it on Broadway, off Broadway, not on Broadway.
Two offs, off Broadway.
And in a really funny theatre where lots of old people came to go to sleep.
That's my kind of theatre.
Because it was really warm and it was Christmas and it was freezing on the streets. Anyway, I did it there, and actually that was when I started to employ the kind of what happens if I deviate, allow for the rawness to come out, and it became a better show, I think, as a result. And actually the Songbirds album wouldn't have probably happened without that. It's all these funny stages in life where you don't realise.
Yes. And if I may, is that one of the other pieces of music you might proffer to the sort of...
Yeah, beware of young girls who come to the door, wistful and pale, of 24, delivering daisies with delicate hands. I mean, she's such a good writer. She's brilliant. But yeah, I've sung it for you now, but you can also put it in.
Wonderful. So now we're at what two things never fail to grab your attention, irrespective of anything else that's going on in our chaotic lives. So this is where it's squirrels. What are your squirrels of distraction? Squirrels is borrowed from the film Up, where the dog goes, "Well, squirrels." So what are your squirrels of distraction?
Smell. It's a sense. All of my things are very sensual. I think that's okay.
I think it's okay. I'm liking it.
I think I've got quite a good nose for smell. So I'll smell quite specific things and be able to articulate. I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example now. I remember when I was younger, as a child, I could always smell alcohol on adults' breath.
Wow. And
that's continued into my kind of like working life, where you just get a little like, oh, did you have a big night last night?
Well, even the vodka brigade, go you.
But also smells of, like at the moment, spring, the smells of flowers. And I'd like to cultivate it more, because I think being distracted by things like smell is a kind of good way to stop life being just a kind of treadmill of moving through. I always noticed my mum and my mother-in-law, that kind of really old-fashioned thing of like, oh, smell this rose, darling. I mean, that's not my mum at all. But my mother-in-law was a big Rose fan, and she sadly died during the pandemic. And sometimes I think of her the way she got distracted was by really simple things in her garden, the smell or the grass or You know,
Did you say, did you say your mum died during the pandemic? Is that what you just
no,
said?
my mother-in-law died.
Apologies. Yeah, that's why I wanted to call it. Oh, yes, sorry.
Yes, no, sorry. My mother-in-law died. Really terrible. Actually, oh my God. No, because her smell continued to the end. So she made some. My husband went to see her. I think he wouldn't mind me telling this story. He went to see her at the end, and obviously it was bloody awful because it was COVID and no one could wear masks. You couldn't go in, and he had to talk to her through a window. But what he took a car down from Bristol, drove for 3 hours, got to her care home, stood outside the window, and one of the first things she said to him is, "You smell of fat." Which was because he'd eaten a bag of chips on the way down. And so it was kind of one of those both awful things. Like he came back going, "I can't believe that's one of my last things my mother said to me." But at the same time, an amazing part of her that was just that at the end was really just like hitting its level.
Yeah, there's sort of a beauty in that too, because obviously COVID was a lung attacking thing, but she still had a sense of smell, which is the lovely thing to keep precious to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and she was a fantastic woman, and she was, she was ready to go because her husband had gone, and sort of. I think that I've always been. I'm very lucky in that not many people around me have died. My grandmother died when I was 30, and that was the first person close to me I knew. I hope you don't mind me going into this area, but I think it's okay. But so I think I've always considered myself as a slightly naive person who doesn't really know what it is, this next phase. And it's interesting that through my in-laws, who I deeply loved, I have had that and through my husband's grief for them, it's a sort of gentle understanding of like, okay, wow, this is actually what a lot of people are having to deal with much earlier. I'm so lucky to have got to this point in my life and not experienced this. But also it's the next part of the journey. It's like where we post 50, that's where we're all headed. So I think being able to be with people that's kind of inspiring and with my grandmother, for example, I sang with her right to the end. I sat with her and sang with her, and she sang back with me, and same with my grandfather actually. So I kind of I'm very interested in staying attuned to those sort of maybe harder things, because I think there's huge kind of beauty and learning to come out of those moments.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And now we're going to talk about a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know until you tell us. And I'm just aware that we've got about 7 minutes left, so that's my problem, not yours.
Quirky, and did I write this down? Yes, I am good at synchronized swimming.
Oh, awesome. What a cool fact.
I wish I could say I've won an award or something, but no, when I was younger, I did do competitions, and I used to do this special American synchronized swimming where you salute in the middle of your crawl.
Go you.
And then you go back down into the water, put your legs up. And I can still, when I'm in the swimming pool and my kids are around, I still show off to them. And they're like, "Oh, Mum, you've got something we didn't know about."
Sort of half songstress, half mermaid. See what we're doing there. And I'm assuming you did it as part of a squad. It wasn't just you just going.
No,
yeah.
It's part of a group of us. No, that's the whole point. It's got to be very, very organised and disciplined.
Because you can't actually tell if it's synchronised if it's just you doing it, can you? Anyway, that's good. We've done the shaking of the tree, please. And now we're moving away from the tree, staying in the clearing, which is in your wonderful, sumptuous forest, which is going to keep on giving as a storytelling analogy. And now we're going to talk about alchemy and gold. When you're at purpose and in flow, Kate Dimbleby, what are you absolutely happiest doing and what you're here to reveal to the world, please?
I think you might know the answer to that, which is singing. Yeah.
Of course.
But not actually singing to anyone else. I would say my happiest place, I have a little kind of cubby hole down at the bottom of the house, and I go there with my vocal looper, which is how I do the Acappella stuff, and I literally just sing, and I layer my voice, and I just do it for as long as possible until I feel better. And that's it. That's my medicine for me, and then I can go out in the world and take it out there. And what a lovely thing.
Beautiful answer. And then this at the end, post the outro, I'll lay on some music that you're willing to gift to the programme, if you like, to layer onto it. So this will be a moment to listen out for what goes beyond. So what would you like to sort of offer at this point as a track that we might have from you?
Oh,
sorry, you don't have to sing it at this moment because I'll bung it on
no,
later.
No, I'm just looking. What I did write a couple of, not like Life is a bit heavy. Maybe Musical Boxes, which is about letting our sounds out. It's a good song. Tom Robinson found it and regurgitated my career. No, basically he, you know, I was 40 whatever I was, and he played it on Radio 6, and it was like a very exciting moment.
Listen,
cool
go me, having done my research. He said that's the darndest thing I heard all week. He quite liked what you did.
Yes.
Yes. Am I still with you? Because you're breaking up slightly. Lovely. So now I'm going to award you with a cake, and then this is where you get to put a cherry on the cake, and this is a final multi-layer cake. What's a favourite inspirational quote that's always given you succor and pulled you towards your future?
Apart from don't try to sound so pretty. I think somebody said to me when we were starting the business, you are only limited by your imagination. And I know that feels like it's been said a million times before, but I genuinely feel it's true. Having kind of moved into an area I could never have imagined myself in, I think you just have to keep pushing those blockers that are stopping your imagination thinking where you want to go and where you want to explore.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, is that the same one? Maybe I did that.
It could be. Sorry, let's go here instead, which is what notes, help or advice might you offer to a younger version of yourself, Kate?
Relax, have fun.
And we're ramping up to a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, but just before we get there, it's pass the golden baton, please. Who in your network would you most like to pass the golden baton to, having experienced this now from within?
Well, I'd like to, I think I'd like to pass it to a writer friend of mine, Kathy Rensenbrink, who is, she's published 6 books now. The most recent one was called How to Feel Better. And she started with her memoir about a kind of traumatic event in her life. So I think she's she's just amazing at encouraging other people to tell their stories, and you'll love her. Yeah. And
give me her name one more time. Kathy
Rensenbrink
is the right answer.
Going back to the beginning, she grew up in a pub in Yorkshire or in Leeds. And she was always known as the girl from the pub, the daughter of the people from the pub. And now she's married a Danish man, so she's now got that rather interesting surname. But so she was one of the first people who said, "Oh, I grew up in poverty in a pub in Leeds, and yet I feel a bit similar to you about my name." And it was just one of those kind of interesting moments where people meet.
And your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to furnish me with a warm introduction, please. Thank you very much. And so I'm just motoring on course of time now. And yes. Now, inspired by Shakespeare and all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players, we're going to talk about legacy now. How, when all is said and done, Kate Dimbleby, Songbird, would you most like to be remembered?
She gave good hugs. Somebody said, my uncle said to me the other day that I was cuddly, and a former me would have taken that very badly. But now I was like, that is not a bad person to be someone who people want to cuddle, because life can be bony and hard and horrible and spiky, and we need more cuddles.
You can have that. That's awesome. She gave good hugs. What a legacy. Where can we find out more about you on the old interweb?
www.katedimbleby.com is my, singing and performing and everything else, writing website. And then stornoway.io, which is the storytelling tool, digital storytelling tool for interactive filmmaking.
As this has been your moment in the sunshine of the Good Listening To show, Stories of Distinction and Genius, is there anything else you'd like to say, Kate Dimbleby?
Other than I just had a brilliant time, and thank you very much for letting me blab on for an hour. It was delightful.
No, the pleasure was half mine because I enjoyed blabbing on too. So, just in case of managing time, so you've been listening to the lovely Kate Dimbleby. Tune in next time for more stories from the clearing. And anything else you'd like to say?
Have a good day. Dance while the sun is shining.
First bit was quite American. Y'all have a good day now. Okay. And good night. You've been listening to the Good Listening To show here on UK Health Radio with me, Chris Grimes. Oh, it's my son.
If you've enjoyed the show, then please do tune in next week to listen to more stories from the clearing.
If you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, then please do so. There's also a dedicated Facebook group for the show too. You can contact me about the programme, or if you'd be interested in experiencing some personal impact coaching with me, care of my Level Up Your Impact programme, that's chris@secondcurve.uk. On Twitter and Instagram, it's
@ThatChrisGrimes.
So until next time, from me, Chris Grimes, from UK Health Radio, and from Stan,
To your good health.
and goodbye. And now, as a happy postscript to original pieces of a cappella music by the lovely Kate Dimbleby, we have Musical Boxes, followed by Lady with the Braid. Enjoy. Hey, 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 hey.
What we are is delicate and should be held like tiny birds. As we feel it, let it go and flutter there. What we are is ancient, true, held deep within the tree. Let the water in to feed us. Like musical boxes, we lock up our sounds and save them till everyone's out. Imagine the noise we could make with our voices if we let it out, if we let it out. Like musical boxes, we lock up our sounds and save them till everyone's out. Imagine the noise we could make with our voices if we let it out, if we let it out. Imagine the noise we make with our voices if we let it out, if we let it out. you care to stay till sunrise? It's completely your decision. It's just that going home is such a ride, such a ride. Going home is such a ride. Going home is such a ride. Isn't going home a lonely ride? Would you hang your denim jacket near the poster by Picasso? Do you sleep on the left side or the right, or the right? Would you mind if I leave on the light? Would you mind if it isn't too bright? Now I need the window open, so if you happen to get chilly, there's this coverlet my cousin hand crocheted, hand crocheted. Do you mind if the edge is afraid? Would you like to unfasten my braid? Shall I make you in the morning a cup of homemade coffee? I will sweeten it with honey and with cream. When you sleep, do you have dreams? You can read the early paper, and I can watch you while you shave. Oh God, the mirror's cracked. When you leave, will you come back? You don't have to answer that at all. The bathroom door is just across the hall. You'll find an extra towel on the rack. On the paisley pattern papered wall, there's a comb on the shelf. I papered that wall myself, that wall myself. Would you care to stay till sunrise? It's completely your decision. It's just the night cuts through me like a knife, like a knife. Would you care to stay a while and save my life? Would you care to stay a while and save my life? I don't know what made me say that. I've got this funny sense of humor. You know I could not be downhearted if I tried, if I tried. It's just that going home is such a ride. Going home is such a ride. Going home is such a ride. Isn't going home a lonely ride? Going home is such a ride. Going home is such a ride. Isn't going home a lonely ride? Isn't going home a lonely ride? Isn't going home a lonely ride?
So, Kate, you've just been given a good listening to. Could I just get your immediate feedback on what you think of the curated structure of the vehicle of this? What was it like?
Well, I love it, as you rightly pointed out. Actually, forests and trees and all those analogies are like part of my daily kind of enjoyment of life. So I loved it, and I loved you listening. I loved you listening. Isn't it? What an amazing opportunity to have someone actually just listen to you talking about things that give you joy, and some other things.